I was first introduced to mixed martial arts several years ago when I watched my first UFC event. I have been a diehard fan ever since. I noticed that there were many different types of mixed martial arts, but one stood out to me. It is a very important part of the UFC. It is called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. For the next few minutes, I will provide facts of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. First, I will describe what it is and how it has evolved. Secondly, I will discuss a few of the top techniques used in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Lastly, I will describe how Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has impacted the mixed martial arts world. I will start by describing what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is, how it has evolved, and where it came from. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a mixed martial art. According to the article Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a physical combat sport utilized for self-defense and grappling. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is presented as a form of sports entertainment and competitions like the UFC, also known as the Ultimate Fighting Championship, Strikeforce, and Bellator. With the basis of grappling, the key is to put your opponent down into a vulnerable position and to submit him. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has evolved from Japanese roots. Now, it has developed into its own system. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is similar to Japanese Jiu-Jitsu and Judo because a lot of the techniques are similar. There are three different categories as to why people train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. One is for self-defense. Two is to use in fighting competitions. And third is for sports grappling tournaments. Although Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has evolved into its own system, it still has a lot of the similar techniques. Almost all Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu techniques are done on the ground. The purpose is to tap your opponent out with a submission. My Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach, Danny Ives, has taught me many of these techniques. One of the categories of techniques is the dislocation of the joints. The armbar is probably one of the most famous joint dislocation moves in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It is when you're pulling your opponent's arm while you have your legs wrapped around his chest. As you're pulling his opponent's arm, you're basically dislocating his elbow. In the book, The Sport of Judo discusses many of these different types of techniques. Another category of techniques is the choke. The triangle choke is when you basically wrap your legs around your opponent's neck and you create a triangle. The purpose is to cut the carotid artery so that no oxygen gets to your opponent's brain. Another popular choke is a rear naked choke. That's when you take your opponent's back and choke him from behind. Now that you know a few of the top techniques in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I will now explain to you how Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has impacted the mixed martial arts world. Even though it started as not so popular in the mixed martial arts world, it has now greatly impacted a lot of the mixed martial arts. As read in Total MMA, The Ultimate Fighting, Royce Gracie is the one responsible for bringing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu into mixed martial arts. He is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and is one of the most popular practitioners in the world. Before Royce Gracie brought it over to mixed martial arts, it was not that popular. Now, it plays a big role in the UFC and Strikeforce. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is such an essential part of MMA. A lot of MMA fighters cannot survive or be successful in fighting championships without a good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background. According to a history and style guide of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu makes you a more well-rounded fighter, and it gives the fighter the advantage when the fight goes to the ground. Anderson Silva, who is the current middleweight champion of the UFC, has never lost in his UFC career. He has a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and has pulled off many submissions in his UFC career. Many UFC fighters still compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitions today just to improve their ground game. As Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is growing bigger and better known, a lot of mixed martial arts fighters use it to their advantage. For the past few moments, I have given you information about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I have talked to you about what it is, how it has evolved, what the main techniques in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu are, and I've also explained how Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has impacted the mixed martial arts world. My interest in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has been growing ever since my first UFC event. I've been training for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for many months now. The physicality and mental awareness needed is challenging, but it is also fun as well. The cardio needed is very tough, but it is an excellent exercise. Pulling off chokes and submissions gives you an accomplished feeling. Even though Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is tough, I feel as though it helps you become a stronger person both mentally and physically. I look forward to going to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu every single day just so I can become a stronger person.